All to be Smigos and Possible Mikas, my name is Taffray16, welcome back to another reaction video. Today we're going to be reacting to Friday Night, Saturday Morning. So this is a channel points request by username. Thank you username for using your points on this. So Friday Night, Saturday Morning was a UK television chat show with a revolving guest host that ran on BBC Two from September of 79 to April of 82, had 6 series, 64 total episodes. This show's legacy is two things. One, it was the first show to be hosted by a former British Prime Minister, Harold Wilson, who actually served 2 terms as Prime Minister, first from 64 to 70 and then again from 74 to 76, hosted 2 episodes of this in the first series, which did not go well, as he was not good at the auto cue and attributed a lot of it to memory loss, and it should be noted that he was later diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So, yeah. The other thing that's notable for is what we're going to see today, the Monty Python debate episode, where John Cleese and Michael Palin came on the show and were met with a apparent blindside attack from Christian journalist Malcolm Muggeridge, who, funny enough, was originally known as a satirist, and also Mevrin Stockwood, who was a Church of England bishop. So this ought to be interesting. I guess they thought the movie was blasphemous, and it resulted in a 50-minute debate, which we are going to watch today. This premiered on November 2nd, 1979. What is further funny about this also is it was hosted by Tim Rice, who, if you didn't know, wrote the lyrics to Jesus Christ Superstar. So I'm sure he's gotten his own blasphemy allegations. But let's go ahead and watch it.
Friday night,
oh shit.
Saturday morning, but yesterday's gone, there's a weekend dawning. Friday night, Saturday morning.
I didn't expect this fire-ass theme.
Pack up your troubles then. Monday's the day for them. Oh, it's time to relax again. Friday night, Saturday morning at last.
And there's the man.
Good evening. Tonight, every expense spared. Guests include Paul Jones and the Blues Band, the author of the book more frequently stolen from public libraries throughout the world than any other, that's Norris McWhirter, and 4 gentlemen who will be discussing a controversial
With all due respect to the
film
first 2 people
inspired
mentioned,
by
I'm
the
probably
New
not going to leave
Testament.
that in.
Only yesterday, in the
'Cause I don't
Scotsman,
care.
a prominent news item headed New Superstar Row revealed that the film Jesus Christ Superstar has this week been banned from a cinema in the Western Isles as blasphemous. A curse placed on another remote Scottish cinema which dared to screen Superstar in 1976 led to the recent closure of that particular house of entertainment. If Superstar still has this trouble nearly 10 years after its creation, what hope does Monty Python's Life of Brian have today? Soon,
A lot.
the opinions of John Cleese, Michael Palin, Malcolm Muggeridge and Mervyn Stockwood, the Bishop of Southwark. Here's a moderately controversial clip from the film.
Oh no. Play the clip, Johnny. You got fucked on. Good job, everybody. Hello? Do we get it? There we go.
Hello, Mother.
Don't you hello, Mother me! What are all those people doing out there?
Oh, well,
Come on, what have you been up to, my lad?
By the way, I've done a full reaction to this film, and it's on YouTube. I did it about 13 months ago. I also did The Holy Grail as well. So if you haven't seen those, they exist.
I think they must have popped by for something.
Pop by? Sworn by Moonlight?
He's not the Messiah.
Out there.
They started following me yesterday.
Well, they can stop following you right now. Now stop following my son. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves.
That extract featured Graham Chapman as Brian and Terry Jones, who also
Glad we
directed the
finally got
picture,
to it.
as Mandy, mother of Brian. With us tonight, another 1/3 of Monty Python, John Cleese and Michael Palin.
Oh, where'd they go? Oh, they're there.
Cracked. BBC cutbacks. Oh, yeah.
Michael, why the name Brian?
Well, I don't know. We've always used Brian in Python to portray a certain sort of character, fairly anonymous, and I apologise to anyone called Brian, slightly sort of...
I mean, there's a
a
good
touch
chance of...
dim. Not dim. That's not fair. It's slow to catch on.
And there's a
So
fighting chance
dim.
of at least one Brian watching tonight, so
Well,
be careful.
I don't know. Have you seen the figures? Cheap, wasn't it cheap? No, actually, John was in a sketch about a footballer being interviewed in one of the very early Python shows, and it was all, Brian.
Yeah,
There's the ball in the
that's
back of the
right.
net, Brian.
I'm opening a boutique, Brian. But it's one of the funny names, isn't it? It's like Trevor and Kevin. I mean, they're just funny.
What inspired
And
the
Tim.
film, Life of Brian? I mean, how did that strange idea take root in, and indeed in whose skull did it take root?
Well, we're not exactly certain. It's always difficult to find the exact moment when it came up. But I know that when we were going around the world, sort of doing premieres for the Holy Grail, and we had a lot of time to spare in airports and cafes and restaurants. We got to thinking about a new film and what particular area we might go in, and we were still keen to do a historical film. More fun, dressing up and all that. We'd done the Bowler Hatted City Gents on Python. And I think it was Eric who came up with this title out of the blue called Jesus Christ Lust for Glory. And I must admit that when we started talking about it, we actually explored the idea of doing a comedy film about Jesus, with all the jokes about someone trying to book a table for 12 at the Last Supper. Sorry, sir, Saturday night I'll do you 3 4s. Come in tomorrow, no, it's got to be tonight, and all those jokes. And the more that we read about Jesus and the background to his life, it was quite obvious that there was very little to ridicule in Jesus' life. And therefore we were sort of onto a loser. The characters we like to portray in Python are failures, are dim, are idiotic, are sort of incapable in one way or another. Jesus was a straight, direct man, so making very good sense. And so we decided that it would be very sort of just a rather shallow film just about Jesus. So we got Brian in.
You must have known, though, that even in those early days you were heading for trouble and criticism and controversy. A, because you were well known. B, because, to put it mildly, the subject matter is quite well known.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did that
John
worry
thinks.
you?
I mean, I feel
And
that
C,
Python,
because
we've
the
always
Christians get
thrived
buttered
on
a
that.
lot.
It's always been a bit of an uphill struggle.
So
When
what
we
came
first
first?
started,
Was it the laughter idea or the message? I mean, which was the first of the two that...
It's the laughter. We go
Yeah.
for the jokes first. I mean, the reason that it sounded like an interesting territory to go into, to explore, because when you go in there, you really don't know what you're going to write. I mean, we usually sit around for about 3 days discussing theoretically what we're going to write, and then we go around and write something completely different. And the film actually starts when somebody comes in halfway through the second week and reads something out, and we all laugh. And that's the first point on the graph.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yes,
And then we
yes.
may wait another week, and then somebody else writes something funny, and then we have 2 points on the graph. And when we've got about 6 or 7, we start writing stuff to join it together. It's a pretty slow process because it's sort of democracy gone mad.
So,
It
sorry.
took a long time. It took a long time for Brian to really get off the ground. We wrote an awful lot, which was then just thrown away because it was sort of struggling too hard to be sort of controversial.
Well, actually, Mike, I don't know. I agree with that because I don't think that we were coming in with stuff about Christ. We all started writing about on the edges, all the people who'd arrived 5 minutes after the miracle had been done. Which is as bad as being 2,000 years late. The point
Yeah.
is, if you didn't see it, it doesn't matter whether you're 5 minutes late or whatever. Actually, we did have the idea that he was the 13th disciple, didn't we? A sort of slight
That's right,
hanger-on.
yes.
Yes, that's right. He was
I haven't
all right
funny.
at gospel, but he was always late.
Because it was also called Brian of Nazareth at one point, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And yet you changed that title, yet that would have worked, wouldn't it, for this movie or not?
Well, I think I always thought that title somehow asked for the comparison with Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah.
You know, the Powell thing too much. It looked as though
Right.
we were going for the comparison.
Yeah,
You
I get
apparently used Lou Grade's sets that he used on Jesus of Nazareth. Didn't you, in fact, use the same
Yes.
scenario?
The ones he hadn't taken down. We used them for building our own sets in. There was temples there in Monastir, in this place in Tunisia. Which
It was
is
luck,
quite
really,
fun.
yeah, because at one stage we were looking for about, I think there were 5 or 6 different places we might have shot it. Italy, Spain, Jordan, Israel, Morocco,
Yeah.
Tunisia. And I think we decided Tunisia eventually, partly because we thought there might be religious trouble in the Catholic countries, and partly because we discovered they'd been making a lot of films in the last 2 or 3 years in Tunisia. And then when you sort of say, we'll get the rushes here in the morning, you don't arrive and find there's a lot of rushes there. You know,
There's
because they've
practically
actually-
an industry over there of making films about Jesus, because Rossellini had made a film, then Lou Grade had been there for a couple. Rossellini, an Italian director, made a film about Jesus. Then, well, I don't know.
I missed that.
He thought it was a footballer, didn't he?
No, I thought it was a food.
Turin, FC Turin. No, Rossellini made this film, and then I thought it was rather good.
Is he
name to
good,
drop.
Rossellini?
Yeah, he's a bit slow. He worked the second half. He was very good. Hit the ball, and there it was in the back of the stand.
If he's watching, I'm terribly sorry, but I've
Yeah.
never heard of the guy.
Well,
He's made a film. Has it come
He's
out?
made a film about Jesus, and it came out. Yes, I think so.
Well, the extraordinary thing is, Tim, I don't know all the facts of this because I was only told this about 4 days ago, but apparently there are now 4, quote, funny, unquote, films about the Bible coming out the next 3 months.
As a result of Brian,
Well,
or
I
just
don't know. I
coincidentally?
think it may just be coincidence. Mind you, we've been talking about it on and off for 3 years, so maybe the idea sort of filtered into somebody else's
How did the whole thing
consciousness.
get together? Because you had this great idea in an airport lounge or wherever, and still you have a fairly long way to go from Terminal
Yeah.
2 to screens
It was
all
a
over
very
the world.
big airport. It took us ages.
Well, it is that pragmatic thing.
Because you had
Just-
trouble with the cash and
Yeah.
backers pulling
Oh,
out.
terrible trouble, yes. In fact, if George Harrison hadn't known Eric Idle, the film wouldn't have been made. Because although the Americans, I mean, after the EMI thing fell through, we then went to America. No, I
What
didn't say
happened,
anything.
John?
I didn't say anything.
Fell through.
Fell through. Fell through. Failed to happen, as it were.
Natural course.
We then went to America, and they were all prepared to give us a little bit of money, but not enough, not as much as we needed to make the film. So we needed, I think, $2.5 million to make it for the American territories, and they wouldn't give us more than 1.75. So, come the middle of the year, we suddenly realised we weren't going to make it, and then out of the blue, John Goldstone, the producer, said, "Well, I've got one more meeting with George Harrison," and George Harrison, which is, I think, is really one of the great, almost magnificent acts of the century, said he was quite happy to put up £1 million for no other reason, apparently, that he wanted to see the movie.
Sure, yeah, why not?
It's true, yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Weren't you all in some danger of splitting up, or at least some internal conflict? Did the film, in fact, bring you together?
Yes, I mean, I think it did. After the Grail, there was about a year spent sort of in the wilderness, as it were. No one quite sure what they wanted to do. And people going off to try and do their own things, Fawlty Towers or ripping yarns or whatever.
Also,
and-
there was a stage when we hated each other.
Well, I never hated you, John. No, whatever any of the others may say, I always liked you.
What about your solo projects? I mean, are there going to be any more ripping yarns, any more Fawlty Towers?
There'll be no more Fawlty Towers.
Absolutely.
He sent me a wonderful telegram last week when I had my 40th birthday, and it read, "We love the first 40, stop. Are you going to do any more?"
You got it right.
Well, are you? I mean, is there going to be a...
I don't think so, no. I feel we've done that, just as I felt about Python and the telly, that you actually reach a point, and then it's the law of diminishing returns. You could go on.
And does that mean there won't be any more Pythons on the telly?
highly unlikely at the moment.
But not
highly unlikely.
totally
Well, not
ruled out.
totally. I mean, I don't think anything's absolutely, definitely ruled out.
I tell you what I hate, and that's the sausage machine. And you get into it
Yes.
the moment you sign on the dotted line. 13 shows. That's 8 months in the diary, filming, editing, rehearsing. It's much nicer to take 1 2-hour or hour and a half thing, like a film, and spend a lot of time, and then you can savour it and explore and do a lot of talking, which is much better than having to get everything written every day.
See, John's
That makes
very
sense.
oppressed by work. You see, he doesn't like work. And what I
Does
feel
make
about the
sense,
Python shows is that actually I don't know where we would start off. I think we almost did everything in those 3 series, and I just don't know how
I mean,
one
we're
would begin
practically
again.
doing it tonight because we were saying in the dressing room,
Yes.
you know, I mean, it's terribly funny. It suddenly struck us that here we are, you know, in a Bishop and Malcolm Muggeridge are going to come on. You know,
Yeah, when are they coming?
In the studio tonight. Yes.
you know, it's not a sketch.
It does kind of seem like it, yes.
Are you implying that possibly there might be a third or fourth Python movie, a full-length film? This is certainly on the cards.
Yes, in fact, we're supposed to be meeting, aren't we? November the 19th?
Monday week,
Your
I
place?
think. Yeah.
To discuss this very thing. I think it's very likely that we'll do another film.
But we want to see if there's an area that nobody's gone into, really. You see, because the one thing about this film, I mean, I really like it, and there's a lot of stuff we've done I don't like that much.
Yeah.
But I really like this film. And there are moments when I watch it, and I think, I haven't seen anything like this before on the screen.
Is there anything that you think could offend you on screen?
I think I have one tiny quibble, and I think that,
Apart from the veto.
Terry Jones and Graham Chapp will no doubt disagree with me. But I think that the crucifixion thing at the end is not about pain. It's about death, and they are very separate.
So what's your beef?
My beef is that there are 1 or 2 close-ups of 1 or 2 people registering pain. And I think that confuses what the last thing's about. Because, I mean, one's not really making fun of the fact that someone has been flayed till his flesh hung down and then nailed up. The point of that last thing is it's about death. You know, it's about attitudes to death. And it's quite possible to be relatively cheery about death.
Always look on the
Quite
bright side of
possible.
life.
Not saying it's easy.
Yes. Well, for the moment, gentlemen, thank you very much. But I think we ought to see another clip from the movie. No, please stay where you are. We're going to see a second clip from the film, and after that we'll be joined by 2 gentlemen who don't normally review movies, but
Oh,
who
boy.
this evening went to see it on our behalf.
Oh, so they saw it the same day? Oh, man. Yeah.
Hey! Is there another way down? Is there another path down to the river? Please, please help me. I've got to get...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my foot! Oh, master!
Speak to us, Master! Speak to us!
Go away!
How shall we go away, Master?
Oh, just go away. Leave me alone. Give us a sign.
He has given us a sign. He has brought us to this place.
I didn't bring you here. You just followed me. Oh, it's still a sign by any standard.
Master, your people have walked many miles to be with you. They are weary and have not eaten.
It's not my fault they haven't eaten.
There is no food in this high mountain.
Well, what about the juniper bushes over there?
The bush, fruitful by his word. They brought forth juniper berries.
Of course they brought forth juniper berries. They're juniper bushes. What do you expect?
Miracle!
Do not tempt him, shallow ones. Is not the miracle of the juniper bushes enough? I say, those are my juniper bushes. God, they're all I've bloody got to eat.
I am affected by a bald patch. I'm healed. The master has healed me. I didn't touch him. I was blind and now I can see.
And I guess And our guest reviewers are Markham Muggeridge and Mervyn Stockwood, the Bishop of Southwark. I'd like to ask you, Bishop, first, what was your review of the film?
Well, first of all, I was very glad to think that you simply can't get rid of Jesus in Europe today. Ceausescu of Romania, who I think thought like most communists,
Holy shit, this is literally Bishop
Brennan.
Brennan.
Religion very quickly, find that it's, as he said, it's going to hang around with us for quite a long time. And certainly, when you think of what the greatest attractions on the stage, both films and acting, ever since Jesus Christ Superstar, that's what's drawn the crowds. I mean, Jesus is a most disturbing influence. You simply can't get away from him. You may worship him, respect him, commit your life to him, or just ridicule him and lampoon him, but you simply can't get rid of him. And this is what I think is a very, very interesting fact. Even in China, in their changeover now, they thought Chairman Mao's thoughts had replaced the thoughts of Jesus, but poor old Mao and the Gang of Four now really they're on the dog heap, and Jesus is being allowed back. So that
what are you talking about?
Something which I find extremely interesting. Now the second thing well, here's a question I would ask: what are you really trying to say in this film?
What are you trying to
I
say?
on this a wee bit earlier, but unfortunately we only got the picture outside, not the voice, which was something that husbands might want for their wives. But so we didn't quite hear your defence of it. But what are you really trying to say? Now, I wasn't the least bit horrified. And people say, oh, no, Bishop, when you go there, you'll be absolutely horrified. I wasn't at all. After all, I wasn't vicar of the university church for nothing. I'm familiar with undergraduate humour. And I was also governor of a mentally deficient school. And once I was a prep school master, and I felt frightfully at home. I thought I was just sort of back on the old familiar ground this evening. But I really wondered, what you were trying to say. I do hope you don't think I'm being unkind, because I know some of you, and I am very fond of you and have respect for you. But I say this quite frankly, I simply don't think it was worthy of you. It was the sort of thing, as I say, that at Cambridge the footlights did on a damp Tuesday afternoon, or the lower fourth when I was a schoolmaster. But I just don't know what you were saying. Then the third thing, unless I get rather more seriously, why lampoon death? I think this is the thing that really is, sort of worried me. I don't think.
Bro, do you want the glasses on or off?
About Auschwitz or of death, and whatever we think about Jesus, we may think he was the Son of God, we may think he was a mistaken fanatic, but it was a pretty shattering thing what happened, the crucifixion. And as I looked at that, and I thought of now the way people react to the cross, and after all, I'm not ashamed to wear the cross here, which is the sign of a bishop. When I look at that figure, I know you're going to say Brian isn't Jesus, but that's just rubbish. The whole thing is quite clearly, if no Jesus had lived, that film wouldn't have been produced.
But did you feel that the film actually ridiculed Jesus?
Yes, I did.
Even though it wasn't about him and...
Well, I'm afraid, you see, I can't take it wasn't about him.
I don't think it ridiculed Jesus. I think it ridiculed Christianity.
It never existed.
Like, not Christ himself, but religion.
Brown would never have been produced.
That'd be fair.
Could I?
But if I might just say, and then do come and cross-examine me then, but my mind is just sort of working on that last scene, sort of the reaction. There it seemed sort of a tremendous sort of joke, and people were laughing. And then you think of the reaction of a person like Mother Teresa to that scene, what it meant for her. Now, she's a saint, I'm not. But every day of the week I either say Mass or I'm present at Mass. I was this morning.
Bro, what are you talking about?
In the early hours, and I broke the bread. This is my body. And I took the cup. This is my blood. And I didn't roar around with laughter at the altar in my chapel this morning. I just fell down, genuflected, and worshipped, said my Lord and my God. Now,
Okay.
I don't think really that you come and get at me now.
Well,
I'm
What
not
did you even
criticizing
just
any
say?
of you personally.
well, I hasten to say that I had absolutely nothing to do with the film whatsoever.
Yeah,
But before I ask John and Michael to perhaps answer one or two of those points, could I bring in Malcolm and ask you what your review, if review is the right word?
Certainly, yes. Remember that I was engaged for 4 years in the appalling task of trying to make English people laugh. As editor of Punch, it's an almost impossible thing to do. I couldn't help feeling enormous envy of the ease with which this particular film aroused laughter. You simply had to use a 4-letter word or display a man's private parts in the window, and the whole place fell on the ground with laughter. So that I, professionally felt rather put out by that. Also, of
Because
course,
you have a
I
small
agree
willy?
entirely with the bishop that it's quite humbug to say that this is not a ridiculing of the founder of the Christian religion
it's not.
and of the incarnation in an
It's more of a ridiculing
extremely
of the
cheap
religion
and
itself.
tense-rate way. Remember that story of the incarnation was what our whole civilization began with. Remember that it has inspired every great artist, every great writer,
I'm really eager
every
to see
great
Cleese's
composer,
response.
every great builder, every great architect, that to celebrate
30
that
years
marvelous thing.
Germany,
The
Inquisition and so forth. It's sort of...
yes, the Inquisition is there. But nothing can alter the fact that if you were to make a list of all the greatest works of art in all fields and all the greatest contributors to those works of art, you would find that this scene of the incarnation, the story of the incarnation, has played the largest part. Now, in our 20th century, this film produces a sort of graffiti version of it. And I don't think, in the eyes of posterity, it will have a very distinguished place. The bishop mentioned
Yeah, you wanna bet?
Teresa, and I was thinking of her too. Because to
Were
her,
you?
see, and it's something that the makers of this program maybe didn't even think of, but the person of Jesus Christ, not as a historical figure, not
is
as
that
someone in
Mother
the
Teresa?
past, but someone living in the world now, has been the essence of her existence. I once asked her what was the difference between what she did and what social workers do. And she said, well, the point is that social workers are very estimable people, but they do something, they serve their fellows for an idea. I serve my fellows for a person. And if that person wasn't there, or if that person was in some way discredited, then my work is over. And there are many people in the world, despite the fact that the media would suggest the contrary, to whom still this living presence of Jesus Christ in the world is the most essential part of their existence. And you produce it in a film as a derisory and absurd figure. And of course, to someone who has that feeling, as Mother Teresa has, or someone like Catherine Bramwell Booth has, they are deeply hurt and insulted. That doesn't in itself matter. I'd like to put another point too that occurred to me when I
Is
was
it
watching
possible,
it, which
Malcolm,
is...
I'm awfully sorry to interrupt, but is it possible for John perhaps to answer one or two of those
Certainly,
points?
certainly,
Otherwise we're going to have
certainly.
9 points unanswered. But
Yes, it's building up the list a bit. But I mean, the problem that we... No,
It's I just want to say it's incredible that the bishop and the other guy are masters of saying a lot but also saying nothing. Like, what the fuck were they even talking about?
Malcolm, I'm awfully sorry to interrupt, but is it possible for John perhaps to answer one or two of those
Certainly,
points?
certainly,
Otherwise we're going to have
certainly.
9 points unanswered. But
yes, it's building up the list a bit. But I mean, the problem that we... No, seriously, the problem that we have got is that you think that we're ridiculing Jesus. And we say, sort of sincerely and truthfully, that is certainly not what we intended to do, and I believe that we're not. And
Yeah, I
I
agree.
can best answer that, I think, by answering Alvid's question, which is that what were we trying to do? And I think it comes out, spelled out perhaps rather too plainly, rather too banally at one point, when he says, make up your own mind, don't let other people tell you. And we would absolutely deny, at least I would, that there was any attempt to say you should not believe in Christ. What we're saying is take a critical view, find out about it, don't just believe because somebody tells you to. Somebody in the pulpit says something, question it, work it out yourself.
You're seriously suggesting that if someone saw that film, say a young kid who knew nothing about the Gospels or about history, that the figure of Christ that would emerge from it, this story of the Incarnation, would be a noble one, would be...
He would have to sort it out for himself. And he would have to, for example, work out, I mean, does one accept every word in the Bible? In a Sermon on the Mount, did they get it all right when Mark wrote it down 30 years later? I mean, was every word right?
But is the film likely to be seen by anybody who doesn't know an awful lot about Jesus Christ?
Most certainly it is today. If you have it for children of 14 today, you will find that the many, many children of 14 today, thanks to the secular nature of the education they're receiving, know nothing about it at all. And they would see this figure, I think, in the light in which he appears in this film, you see. It's no good you cheating yourselves. You can't have it both ways. You produce this particular film which arouses bursts of laughter, as I said earlier, rather easily procured. But don't imagine that someone seeing that is going to go away with the concept of the founder of the Christian religion and all that that meant to mankind.
Someone here is definitely imagining.
In any way corresponding to what history or the Gospels or anything else is presented.
Well, it's not supposed to be about him, so people shouldn't go and see it to learn.
But it's no good saying that it's not about him.
I'm not being dishonest. I mean,
you're being utterly dishonest,
Can I just say, I mean, I don't know where this will get us, but I feel my approach to the film was I was confused. I feel I'm still asking questions, seeking solutions. I am very confused and perturbed by a religion, an established religion in this country, where people can go into church on a Sunday morning, and the same people can sing hymns and say prayers, and at the same time these people can stand by while their money is spent making bombs, making guns, building up appalling weapons of destruction, can sit by, sing hymns, say their prayers, and agree with a policy in which hospitals have to go without money.
First of all, I'd very much like to know where you get your evidence. You must give me chapter and verse. It so happens that immediately before coming here, I was asked by crowds of church people if I would stand up for the councils of the health of St. Olave's Hospital, which the government is trying to close. The church is extremely active in these...
wow, he looks like George Bush. It just hit me.
And I would urge you not to make these careless generalizations which are not dependent on evidence. Now,
I make them in all humility. I'm seeking answers and solutions. I'm not saying this is absolutely the way it is, but I have observed people...
I mean, what you were saying, if I may say, it was great, but it's sheer rubbish. And you made a ridiculous generalization which is unworthy of an educated man. Now, having said this, back to what you say, somebody aged 14 coming and seeing this thing of Jesus, what you are seeing is not one of the greatest teachers in the world. I mean, granted, lots of people, the majority of people wouldn't accept him as the Son of God as I do, but surely most of us would see him as one of the greatest teachers of the world. Now, you wouldn't guy Socrates or make him appear as a clown. And what I think
maybe
this
there are funny
film...
things about him.
What?
Maybe there are funny things about Socrates. Why shouldn't we make jokes about Socrates?
If there's
that's the next movie.
You would not Socrates.
No, that's not my point. I don't know enough about Socrates.
Also was
maybe
murdered. He was made to drink poison. You wouldn't guy him at that point or make him appear as a clown. And what I say, and I'm afraid you won't alter my conviction, John, over this, is that this most what is to a Christian the most sacred moment of the whole Jesus experience, namely his death, that at that most sacred moment he was guyed and made to look as a clown.
May I make another point just here, which is rather interesting, that if you'd made that film about Muhammad, you see, there would have been an absolute hullabaloo in this country, because all the sort of the racial, anti-racialist people would have risen up in their might. The same people who would approve of this and would have said this is quite disgraceful. And behind people's minds would be the thought of maybe they might lose a bit of oil, by doing it. But you see the difference.
You're right, Malcolm. I mean, 400 years ago, we would have been burnt for this film. Now, I'm suggesting that we've made an advance.
And I'm suggesting that compared with other presentations of this great event...
He is right about the Muhammad thing, though.
You have not made an advance, and that anybody in the future who might dredge up this miserable little film, and it's quite possible they might as a piece of social history, they would certainly not wish to relate it to the thing, say, Chartres Cathedral, which is built to the glory of Christ.
Not a funny building, actually.
But they might want to compare it with Fawlty Towers.
Yes, they're not even intended to be a funny building.
Well, it has the gargoyles on it,
Michael.
I think that, and I've seen this in the sort of reviews of the film, they concentrate always on the religious angle. Even, before they've seen it, they've decided this is a film about religion. I don't think it is entirely. I think that what we've chosen to do is what we've always done in Python. We've done for 3 series and done for 3 films. We have taken a certain group of people, which are generally sort of England in the present day, and put them into a historical context. I think that's what we've done with this film. I think it isn't entirely about religion.
Michael looks very
it's
frustrated.
About the people who live in... Anyone who lives and makes up our society today.
It's also about closed systems of thought, whether they're political or theological or religious, whatever. Systems by which whatever evidence is given to the person, he merely adapts it, fits it into his ideology. You show the same event to a Marxist and a Catholic, for example, they both of them fine, they both have explanations of it.
It's making fun of religion.
To be pompous poppers on about with falsifiability of theories. I mean, once you've actually got
organized religion,
an idea that is whirring around so fast that no other light or contrary evidence can come in, then I think it's very dangerous. I don't think it's dangerous to someone like Malcolm, because he's actually a very nice man. But I think he is the sort of guy that this film is actually having a go at, because I don't think that there's any evidence that can come to him now that is going to make him think, am I right? Am I making a mistake?
Well, you can leave that out. I think I could say with utter sincerity that there was nothing in this particular film that would lead me to want to change conclusions that I've reached after living for 76 years.
Then why are you so butthurt?
Is there anything? That's the point I make.
Well, in this film, there was nothing that could possibly, because the film itself bore so little.
No, but the point I was making, Mark, was not the film. Forget the film. We'll say that's rubbish. Okay. Is there anything that can happen to you now that could cause you to change your mind?
But of course, every single person who is alive and spiritually alive is constantly reviewing his faith. I do not believe for a moment that there is a definitive faith and you say, there it is. But there's nothing in this little squalid number that could possibly affect anybody. And
then why are you bitching about it?
I give you this point, that there's nothing in this film that could possibly destroy anybody's genuine faith.
Then why are we here?
I grant you absolutely not, because it's much too 10th rate for that. But what I still contend is that
what are you doing
someone
here?
who is young, 14 years old, seeing that without any particular background, might really imagine that that buffoonery is an expression of this great episode.
Well, you see, I was also, you talked about the presentation of Christianity. I mean, I went to an English preparatory school and an English public school, Clifton College, or the sports academy.
I sympathise with you.
I was given 8 or 10 years of a form of Christianity which I grew to despise and dislike. Largely, it insulted my intelligence. The sermons that were given at the age of 11 and 12, I felt insulted my intelligence. When I got into writing this film, and we all had exactly the same reaction, we started to discover a lot of stuff about Christianity, and I started to get angry. Because I started to think, why was I given this rubbish? this 10th-rate series of platitudes when there were interesting things to have discussed. There were factual
And
things.
you feel
Nobody
the
ever
interest-
told me.
you feel
Nobody
the-
ever told me that they don't know what language the Gospels were written in, that they don't even know who wrote them, and they're not even sure what cities they were
Well, then
written
you
in.
must have read very superficially at your school. That's all.
Look, John, it's very bad luck
That's his
for you,
point.
but you see, I used to go to Clifton College to preach very often when you were there. I know the headmaster, I know the staff, I know the servants. All I can say is you must have been as idle a boy, as splendid
Look
an
how
actor
pissed
as you
John
are.
is.
I wasn't
Because
actually. I
if
was
you
always open.
really to take
I want to see that face again. Look at his fucking
boy
face.
as
Look at how fucking pissed he is. Good lord. I don't
splendid
blame
an
him.
actor as you are.
I wasn't
Because
actually. I
if
was
you
always open.
really to take this seriously, I mean, you had some absolute
Those
first-class
services
teachers.
were a joke. They were a joke.
Well, and because you made them. You
No.
cannot.
I was
how
open.
do you know about?
I
I
was-
know people who've Clifton College of exactly your own period.
I
who are
remember
now
the
priests
sermons.
in my diocese.
I remember the sermons. I remember.
You don't
writing
remember
bit-
mine. Tell me what I preached on.
No idea. I only remember the bad ones.
What?
I remember a gentleman coming and telling us how very difficult it had proved to get the Bible into Tibet. You know, they'd had
Well,
7 occasions. The first time there'd been landslides. The second time there'd been rains and the pages had got stuck together. The third time, no, this is true. The third time the mules had fallen off the mountainside. The fourth time there were thunderbolts, and the 7th time he said, "God helped us." And we got the Bibles into Tibet. And the obvious conclusion was that he was trying like hell to stop them getting the Bible.
Sorry, but you really are lampooning this because about O-levels and A-levels, going on the whole time, people were taking the scriptures. They'd had to have studied Greek, perhaps Hebrew, and have had made a serious study of the scriptures. You chose not to do that. I'm sure
We
you
made
had
a
far more
superficial
interesting
study.
things to
We
do.
only had 4 years to write the film. We didn't want to get too specialist because if we got too
I'm
specialist...
sorry, I'm talking about Clifton College. But still, I don't really think this has got very much to do with
Could I just ask, as I think in theory anyway, a sort of moderator, I'm supposed to be neutral.
Of the Church of Scotland or the Church of England? Moderating.
I'm supposed to be in the middle, but didn't you... I mean, I felt when I saw the film, and I saw it in a cinema in New York with a very appreciative audience, did you not feel that, in fact, the people being lampooned were the followers rather than Jesus himself? I felt that very strongly.
No, I don't think so. It was... I really felt, I mean, the crucifixion above all else, which is a thing that I felt sad about, because, I mean, I'm quite sure, as all of us will one day, and this
So,
is
AKA
not
you didn't get
trying to attack your
Well, we know that
vulnerabilities, but life is very short. All of us will be on our deathbeds in a comparatively short time. And when we are, and that'll be no laughing matter, that it is much that Christ which I should like to be held up in front of me than the Christ I saw
But the
on
film
the cross this
did
afternoon.
bring home to me...
Sorry, yeah.
I was going to say very quickly that the film reminded me of something which I obviously knew, but one tends to forget, that it wasn't only Jesus that was crucified. I mean, an awful lot of people were crucified in the most horrific circumstances every day of the week under Roman rule.
Yes, that's very true.
And that fact came home in the film. You realise that Jesus didn't have a sort of total copyright to crucifixion.
Yeah, but Jesus was crucified, wasn't he, for his obedience to the will of God. You
But he was
can't
crucified surely for blasphemy.
Yes, they accused him of blasphemy because he was obedient to the will of God and of his kingdom. You can't say that came over today, that with any of the people who were being crucified,
No, but that wasn't true.
I mean, the whole way that it was done, they were not dying for a noble idea.
Well, neither were the...
Yeah, but I mean, I think that what... Can I just make the point I was trying to make earlier on about the film not being seen entirely in religious terms? That, I mean,
Michael's
as
been
Tim
very
has said,
silent.
People were
He's probably
crucified
boiling.
then as common criminals. It was just a form of capital punishment employed by the Romans, who were regarded as a highly civilized people. But it was capital punishment. And in the film, we examine attitudes to capital punishment. As far as I know, in this country, the
stoning?
majority of people we are constantly told are in favour of capital punishment. It just seems that we haven't come that far in all that time.
Why do you think that through all these centuries of Christendom, that the greatest minds, the most creative minds, the greatest artists were believers in this thing that you airily dismiss and say that you, making this little film, have managed to see deeply into it and to reach
Can't
conclusions.
say there you are.
wish
What
I
about
knew
Freddie
what
Air? What about Bertrand Russell? You
not
dismiss
to-
them, of course.
No,
They don't count.
I said in the centuries of Christendom. I didn't say in our time. I said that if you were to make a list of all the people who have contributed most
Most
to
of them would
art
have been
and literature-
Muslims if they'd been
No.
living in the Arab countries,
They-
or Buddhists if they'd been living in
What has
the...
that got to do with it? These people were inspired. These people were inspired by this event, which you have celebrated in this film by a lot of people on crosses singing a sort of, as though it's sort of rather inferior musical.
Death perhaps doesn't matter that much, which
no.
after all you're saying the whole time. You're looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it
Yes.
keenly, but
So-
I'm looking
so are you
forward
sad
to
about it?
No, I'm looking forward to it keenly because I know, because I relate it to these very things that you dismiss. I relate it to the story of the Incarnation, this great drama of the Incarnation, which you have reduced to a sort of comic film. Now, you think that in doing that, you have shed light. I have to tell you that you haven't shed light. You've made some rather bad jokes, and the only reason that people come to see it is because they still relate it to this extraordinary story of the Incarnation, which is in fact the beginning and
don't
the
think so,
end
buddy.
of everything that our civilization stands for. Our civilization began with a man, the Apostle Paul, telling pagan world about the Incarnation. That was
Did
the
it though?
beginning
We're
of
not
it.
the only civilization in the world.
Not at all.
No,
I'm not
there's
saying
a
we
lot of
are.
civilizations
Certainly.
with different religions,
Certainly.
right?
I'm not-
And the important thing is that people should be open to the various possibilities,
said-
and that they should take a critical attitude
Yes, but
to them.
whoever said they shouldn't be open? But you don't make people open by producing the sort of buffoonery that
Well, you
produced
certainly
there.
don't make people open by giving them the kind of garbage I was given at that school.
Well, then I'm very sympathetic to you for having received this garbage, some of it at the hands of our friend Bishop here. I'm very sympathetic indeed, and I think it's very sad and tragic that you should have been cut off from something that's so wonderful and only given garbage. But I would simply point out to you that if you care about what constitutes what we call Western civilization, which now probably is coming to an end, and you were to consider the role that's been played in that by this thing that you treat as a piece of buffoonery, you would have a certain humility in saying that you have been able, through making it, to shed light
But
upon
you keep
something.
making the basic assumption. Sorry, let me just say this,
Yeah.
Mike. You keep making the basic assumption that we are ridiculing Christ and Christ's teaching, and I say that we are not.
But do you imagine that your scene, for instance, of the Sermon on the Mount, the scene in your film of the Sermon on the Mount,
Right.
is not ridiculing one of the most sublime utterances that any human being has ever spoken on this earth? Of course it is.
No, it's
Absolutely
making fun
not.
of the guy who's remembered it wrong and of the people who don't understand it and miss the point.
Well, I think
that's really unfair because I think that a lot of people looking in will think that we have actually ridiculed Christ physically. Christ is played by an actor, Ken Colley. He speaks the words from the Sermon on the Mount. He's treated absolutely respectfully. The camera then pans away. We go right to the back of the crowd to someone who shouts, "Speak up," because they cannot hear him. Now, I mean, if that utterly, undermines one's faith in Christ, then I think the faith cannot be terribly strong.
I started off by saying that this is such a 10th-rate film that I don't believe that it would disturb
Yes, I know you started
anybody.
with
Then why are we
realised.
here? What did he say?
Saying that this is such a 10th-rate film that I don't believe that it would disturb
Yes, I know you
anybody's
started with an open
faith.
mind. I realise that.
John, can I put you a question? Now, without, I hope in any way sort of being pompous, I mean, I have been
Oh, it's a little late for that.
of South London now for over 20 years, and I'm appalled by the sadness, the unhappiness, the tragedy of life, and the drug scene, the violence, the muggings, and so on. And many people now are standing back with a measure of deep disturbance and horror. I was at at Cambridge only the Sunday before last, and I'm told how the undergraduates now are turning up in chapel and seeing if Christianity has got something to offer. There, I think, most of us, I'm sure we'd be all, however much we may differ on this film, that we are deeply disturbed by what's going on in the world and in this country. Now, there is a desire to find truth, to find some answer to our problems. And the question, I would put to you, could you really put your hand on your heart and say that film is going to help the younger generation and its pilgrimage for truth?
If they think about it, absolutely. The message is, what is it, Mike? What are the words? Work it out for yourself. You're all individuals. Don't do what people tell you to do. And that's not
you find that a final,
No, starting point.
Starting point.
Including the lampooning of Christ.
And the lampooning of his death, which is the most disgraceful part of the whole thing.
Surely, Malcolm, it was the lampooning of a form of death, which happened to
You're
hundreds of people.
You're lampooning a scene which has been played a fantastic part in the lives of believers for generations, a scene that has inspired the most amazing disinterestedness, creativity, that set St. Francis of Assisi wandering about the streets, that inspired St. Augustine to write The City of God.
I accept, but I think
that is true, and all you've done is to make a lot of people on a cross singing a music hall song. It's so disgusting when you think of it.
A lot of people go away very happy, laughing at that, their faith not touched one jot.
I don't think it'll touch their faith. I don't think it will.
Look how pissed Michael is. Look at his face, yeah, look at John. I do not blame them.
Come back at this point. And a lot of people on the first Good Friday went away from Calvary laughing their heads off and thinking the death of Jesus was a tremendous joke.
Well, that's very true, because as a matter of fact, all you've done is for the person you followed in this film is Herod. Because it was Herod who organized this absurd scene, and I'm only amazed that you didn't get some comic effects out of the Crown of Thorns. That's the only thing that puzzles me in the film.
If we wanted to make a joke out of Jesus, Jesus would have appeared on the cross. He was an actor, he was there in the film. He does not appear on the cross. Nowhere at all. It's a gang of thieves, of common criminals who were at that time crucified in hundreds day by day. That's... I'm sorry, I know that you think I'm wrong, but that's what I feel. It is not Christ.
I think it's a ludicrous thing, because I tell you that the people see...
This is what the film's about.
Malcolm, can I just say that to an outsider, the crucifixion is a much stronger event if one realizes that Christ went through something that everybody went through. If you treat it like something that only he went through, which is the image you get. I never realized I was about 16 that everybody got crucified.
If he was crucified between...
I also have to say that we have to...
He was crucified between two thieves. If you're saying that the experience of those three people was the same experience simply because they went through the same physical experience, then you are utterly misunderstanding what the crucifixion means, what the passion means, why it's had this enormous role in people's lives. It wouldn't have had that role if it was simply one of innumerable men dying on a cross. It's because of what it signified that in terms of the incarnation, and of course you leave that all out of account. What you've done is you've succeeded in doing, and that for that reason it will have absolutely no influence in the long run. You have succeeded in reducing something which has inspired the greatest art into something which is presented in terms of the lowest art. That's your feat. That's your
set up your own terms that we have to influence people. We're not saying we want to influence people. We're trying to make them laugh, make them happy. That's something that helps.
Gentlemen, I'm going to have to call a halt. I'm very sorry. I think you've made people happy and made them think and made them laugh. And
I think we'll make them talk about it.
Well, you'll get your 30 pieces. You'll get your 30 pieces of silver. I'm quite sure.
I hasten to add that.
You see them looking at each other. I don't think you understand, old man.
You're missing the most wonderful thing in life, and you're seeing it in those terms, and it's utterly tragic.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Utterly tragic.
I hope that film won't shake anybody's faith.
That was one of the most frustrating things I've ever watched, but it was really just old Christians in a nutshell. First of all, obviously, they were wrong. The film's gone down as one of the most influential comedies of all time. So they were incredibly wrong. And like, second off, I just don't. They just didn't get it. Like, and what's funny too, what's really funny is they showed the scene at the beginning, right? Of he is the Messiah. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. That really set the stage for the whole thing, because the whole time they're like, it is making fun of Christ. And they're like, no, it isn't. Like, they morphed into they didn't morph into, they are the very fucking people that film is having a go at. Like, the people, it's not having a go at Christ itself. It's not even having a go necessarily at Christianity, just at religion and blindly following religion and making up your own beliefs, or just blindly following beliefs based off nothing. Like, it was that whole thing was just fucking ridiculous. And it was crazy to see how John and Michael, where you could just see how fucking frustrated Michael was barely saying anything. It seemed like he was so mad. Like, god damn, that was just frustrating to watch. But, you know, both those old men are dead now, and they were wrong. I just think it's incredible that Malcolm was a satirist before that. And you know what the funniest fucking thing too is I read he used to be an agnostic. He only converted to Christianity like 10 years before that interview. The way he speaks, you make him think, you'd think that he's fucking been Christian his whole life. No, he'd only been Christian like 10 years at that point. That's the funny thing about it too. Yeah, that was a frustrating watch. But, you know, they were wrong. This is just the end of it. They were wrong. The one point, I will say, the one point he made about Muhammad was true, though, and that's been proven in time. That was the one good point that either of the two had the entire thing. And also, whatever the line was at the end about his 30 pieces of silver, wasn't he wearing a cross made of silver? Am I wrong? Was this cross made of silver? Whatever. Well, thank you again, username, for requesting this. What did you think of the debate? Let me know with your own comments down below. I'm sure this comment section will be very civil, just like that debate was. But that is going to do it for me today. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to leave it a like. If you didn't like it, don't. If you want to follow any of my social media links, they're all in the video description down below. Thank you to all my Patrons for supporting me, my channels. For those who don't know, you can be a Patreon to me for as little as $1 or £1. You get extra direction videos, also reading comments up to a day early, sometimes more. With that being said, though, my name is Taffy16. This has been my reaction to Friday night, Saturday morning. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.